Right now, at this exact moment, the USS Ronald Reagan nuclear-powered aircraft carrier is returning to port after what the United States Navy is calling an electronic systems malfunction, while Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is claiming they executed a successful cyber attack against the most powerful warship in the Pacific Fleet. The Pentagon insists no attack occurred, just routine technical issues requiring maintenance. Iran's state media is broadcasting footage of what they claim are radar disruption operations targeting American carriers. One of these statements is a face-saving lie designed to hide a vulnerability that could reshape naval warfare forever. The world's most expensive weapons platform, a 97,000-ton symbol of American naval dominance, either suffered an embarrassing breakdown or got electronically hijacked by an adversary everyone assumed lacked that capability. Let me walk you through exactly what happened because the timeline reveals inconsistencies that neither side wants to discuss. At 0847 hours local time on Wednesday, March 26, 2026, the USS Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group was operating approximately 180 nautical miles east of the Strait of Hormuz in international waters of the Gulf of Oman. The carrier was conducting routine flight operations with FA-18 Super Hornets launching and recovering from the flight deck. At 09:02 hours, according to ship tracking data from commercial satellite providers, the Reagan's automatic identification system signal became erratic, showing the vessel's position jumping between coordinates separated by several miles, a physical impossibility for a ship that size. At 09:23 hours, flight operations ceased abruptly mid-cycle with 4 aircraft in the pattern waiting to land. By 09:35 hours, the entire strike group had altered course, turning northeast toward their home port at Yokosuka, Japan, abandoning their patrol station for the first time in 6 weeks of continuous operations. At 10:15 hours, United States 5th Fleet Headquarters in Bahrain issued a terse statement describing technical issues requiring shoreside maintenance without specifying what systems failed. At 11:42 hours, Iran's Tasnim news agency, which maintains close ties to the Revolutionary Guards, published an article claiming Iranian cyber warfare units had successfully disrupted the electronic warfare capabilities of an American aircraft carrier, though they didn't name which carrier. At 13:08 hours, the Reagan's escort vessels, the guided missile cruiser USS Antietam and the destroyer USS Milius, repositioned themselves in defensive formation around the carrier, a posture typically reserved for heightened threat environments, not routine maintenance returns. The carrier strike group is currently steaming at maximum sustainable speed toward Japan, having covered over 400 nautical miles in the past 18 hours, consistent with urgent departure rather than planned maintenance cycle. To understand the significance of what may have happened, you need to understand the USS Ronald Reagan's electronic warfare and defensive systems, because this carrier represents the most sophisticated integration of sensors, weapons, and command capabilities ever deployed at sea. The Reagan, designated CVN-76, is a Nimitz-class supercarrier commissioned in 2003 and recently upgraded with the ship self-defense system that integrates the AN/SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite with the evolved Sea Sparrow missile system and the rolling airframe missile system. The SLQ-32 can detect, identify, and jam incoming threats across multiple electromagnetic spectrum bands simultaneously while coordinating defensive responses from the carrier and its escort vessels. This system cost over $200 million in the latest upgrade cycle and is designed to operate in the most contested electromagnetic environments on Earth. The carrier also operates the cooperative engagement capability, which links the sensors and weapons of all ships in the strike group into a unified network, allowing any sensor to guide any weapon, creating layered defense impossible for single platforms to overcome. The Reagan carries approximately 90 aircraft, including FA-18EF Super Hornets equipped with ALQ-214 electronic countermeasures pods, EA-18G Growler electronic attack aircraft specifically designed to suppress enemy air defenses, E-2D Advanced Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft with powerful radar systems, and MH-60 helicopters for anti-submarine warfare. This entire ecosystem depends on GPS for navigation, precision weapons targeting, flight operations coordination, and maintaining formation integrity across vessels separated by dozens of miles. If GPS becomes unreliable or spoofed, meaning false signals convince systems they're in different locations than reality, the entire operational capability degrades rapidly. Aircraft can't land safely without precise position data. Weapons can't strike targets accurately without GPS-guided munitions functioning correctly. Formation integrity collapses when ships can't verify their actual positions relative to each other. Most critically, the carrier's combat systems rely on accurate timing synchronization derived from GPS signals to coordinate defensive engagements across multiple platforms. Jamming GPS doesn't destroy a carrier, but it transforms the world's most sophisticated warship into a platform operating with 1980s-era capabilities, forced to rely on inertial navigation, visual references, and manual coordination procedures that reduce operational effectiveness by 70% or more. Here's what Iran claims to possess, and why American defense planners are taking these claims seriously despite public dismissals. Iran has been developing electronic warfare capabilities for over 2 decades, initially reverse engineering captured American equipment, and more recently receiving technology transfers from Russia and China, who share strategic interest in degrading American military advantages. In December 2011, Iran captured an American RQ-170 Sentinel stealth drone that crashed near the Afghan border, and Iranian engineers claimed they brought it down through GPS spoofing that convinced the drone it was landing at its home base in Afghanistan when it was actually descending in Iranian territory. The United States never officially confirmed this explanation, but the drone's recovery intact rather than crashed or destroyed suggested some form of electronic capture rather than mechanical failure or missile intercept. Since then, Iran has demonstrated GPS jamming and spoofing capabilities in the Persian Gulf region on multiple occasions. In 2019, commercial shipping companies reported widespread GPS disruption affecting navigation systems across the Strait of Hormuz, coinciding with increased tensions between Iran and the United States. Maritime tracking data showed dozens of vessels reporting positions on land, impossible unless GPS signals were being manipulated. In 2022, Iran unveiled what they called the Mobin electronic warfare system, claimed to be capable of jamming radar, communications, and navigation systems out to ranges exceeding 100 kilometers. Western analysts largely dismissed this as propaganda until signals intelligence detected electromagnetic emissions consistent with sophisticated jamming during Iranian military exercises. The critical question isn't whether Iran possesses electronic warfare capabilities, they clearly do, but whether those capabilities can actually affect a carrier strike group's operations significantly enough to force withdrawal, or whether the Reagan's return stems from unrelated technical failures Iran is exploiting for propaganda purposes. According to Dr. Brian Clark, Senior Fellow and Director of the Hudson Institute's Center for Defense Concepts and Technology, carrier strike groups face asymmetric electronic warfare threats that don't require matching American technological sophistication. Clark explained in congressional testimony last year that adversaries don't need to completely disable carrier systems, they only need to introduce enough uncertainty into GPS-dependent operations that commanders lose confidence in their ability to execute complex missions safely. If pilots can't trust their navigation systems, they can't operate at night or in instrument meteorological conditions. If weapons can't trust GPS guidance, precision strike missions become impossible without risking significant collateral damage from less accurate munitions. If formation keeping becomes uncertain, collision risks during underway replenishment and close proximity operations increase to unacceptable levels. Clark noted that commercial GPS jamming equipment available for a few $1,000s can disrupt signals across several miles, while military-grade systems employing directional antennas and signal amplification can project jamming effects across dozens of miles. The electromagnetic environment in the Persian Gulf and surrounding waters creates natural advantages for shore-based jammers because signals propagate across water more effectively than over land, extending effective jamming ranges. Additionally, atmospheric conditions in the region, particularly during certain times of year, create ducting effects where signals bounce between atmospheric layers, allowing jamming to affect areas far beyond normal line-of-sight limitations. From Iran's strategic perspective, demonstrating capability to force an American carrier withdrawal through electronic means rather than kinetic attack serves multiple objectives simultaneously. First, it suggests Iran can impose costs on American operations without crossing the threshold that triggers massive retaliation. Jamming GPS doesn't kill sailors, doesn't sink ships, and doesn't provide the political justification for large-scale American military response, but it still achieves the operational effect of removing American combat power from the region temporarily. Second, it creates uncertainty among American planners about their ability to operate effectively in a high-threat electromagnetic environment, potentially deterring future deployments or forcing expensive countermeasures. Third, it provides domestic propaganda victory, showing the Islamic Republic can defend itself against American military superiority through asymmetric capabilities. Fourth, it signals to other regional adversaries, particularly Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, that Iran possesses capabilities to disrupt not just military operations but commercial shipping and aviation that depend on GPS navigation. Finally, it demonstrates to potential partners like China and Russia that Iran has successfully operationalized technologies they've shared, encouraging continued technology transfer. From the United States Navy's perspective, acknowledging that electronic attack forced a carrier withdrawal creates unacceptable strategic consequences, even if technically accurate. Admitting vulnerability to electronic warfare capabilities possessed by a regional power like Iran undermines decades of messaging about American naval supremacy and invites adversaries to invest in similar capabilities. It creates pressure for expensive defensive upgrades across the fleet at a time when shipbuilding budgets face constraints. It raises questions about whether carriers can operate effectively against near-peer competitors like China, who possess far more sophisticated electronic warfare capabilities than Iran. Most critically, it could encourage Iran and other adversaries to employ electronic attack more aggressively, calculating that the United States will tolerate disruption that falls short of kinetic violence. The Navy's institutional preference for attributing carrier withdrawals to maintenance requirements rather than adversary action reflects rational operational security concerns about revealing vulnerabilities, but it also prevents honest assessment of whether current defensive systems adequately protect against evolving threats. There are three possible scenarios for how this situation develops, and the probability distribution depends heavily on which explanation proves accurate. Scenario 1, the optimistic pathway, is that the Reagan genuinely suffered unrelated technical failures requiring shoreside repair, and Iran is simply exploiting the coincidental timing for propaganda purposes. In this scenario, which I assess has approximately 30% probability, the carrier completes maintenance within 2 to 3 weeks and returns to station in the Western Pacific. Iran claims victory but lacks evidence to substantiate their electronic attack claims. American operations continue without significant operational adjustments because no actual vulnerability was exposed. This scenario requires that the abrupt flight operation cessation, the defensive escort repositioning, and the maximum speed departure all stem from legitimate technical emergencies rather than threat response. The main indicator supporting this scenario would be detailed reporting from American defense officials specifying the technical systems that failed and the maintenance procedures required to repair them. Scenario 2, the controlled escalation pathway, is that Iran successfully demonstrated electronic warfare capabilities that degraded but didn't completely disable carrier operations, forcing American commanders to withdraw while retaining capability to defend against kinetic attack. This scenario carries approximately 50% probability and represents the most likely explanation for observed behavior. In this pathway, Iran's jamming created sufficient GPS disruption that the Reagan's air wing couldn't safely continue flight operations in congested airspace near commercial shipping lanes where navigation precision prevents collisions. Commanders made tactical decision to withdraw to safe operating areas rather than risk aviation mishaps that would provide Iran with propaganda victory and potential casualties. The carrier remains combat capable for self-defense, but cannot execute offensive missions reliably while GPS remains jammed. This scenario explains the urgent departure and defensive formation without requiring complete systems failure. It also explains why both sides have incentive to obscure what actually happened. Iran prefers to claim total success, while the United States prefers to claim nothing significant occurred. The indicators for this scenario include increased American electronic warfare deployments to the region, accelerated fielding of alternative navigation systems that don't depend on GPS, and careful positioning of future carrier operations to remain outside Iranian jamming range. Scenario 3, the nightmare pathway, is that Iran demonstrated the capability to fully compromise carrier strike group combat systems through sophisticated cyber intrusion or electronic attack that exceeded defensive countermeasures. This scenario has approximately 20% probability but catastrophic implications if accurate. In this trajectory, Iranian penetration wasn't just GPS jamming but deeper infiltration into shipboard networks that could potentially control targeting systems, weapons, or propulsion. This would explain the maximum speed emergency departure and the complete flight operation cessation even though carriers can operate without GPS, if necessary. If Iran achieved this level of access, American planners must assume Chinese and Russian intelligence services will acquire the same capabilities through intelligence sharing, fundamentally undermining carrier strike group viability in contested environments. This scenario requires classified emergency response from Cyber Command, immediate fleet-wide security audits, and potential revelation of zero-day vulnerabilities in naval combat systems. The indicators suggesting this scenario include prolonged carrier unavailability, extending beyond normal maintenance timelines, unusual personnel transfers or investigations, and defensive posture changes across the Pacific Fleet beyond just the Reagan strike group. Watch for 5 critical signals in the next 72 hours that will reveal which scenario is materializing. First, official statements from Pacific Fleet headquarters. If they release specific technical details about what systems failed and repair timelines, the maintenance explanation gains credibility. If they remain vague or classify details that would normally be unclassified, electronic attack explanation becomes more likely. Second, Iranian media coverage. If Iran provides electromagnetic spectrum data, GPS signal analysis, or other technical evidence supporting their attack claims, they're confident in their capabilities. If they rely on vague claims without specifics, they're opportunistically exploiting coincidence. Third, American electronic warfare aircraft deployments. If EA-18G Growlers and EC-130 Compass Call aircraft surge into the region, the United States is prioritizing electronic countermeasures confirming electromagnetic threat environment. Fourth, commercial aviation and shipping patterns. If airlines continue routing through the Gulf region without GPS navigation warnings, the disruption was localized to military frequencies. If commercial operators issue navigation alerts or reroute around the area, widespread GPS jamming continues. Fifth, carrier deployment patterns in coming weeks. If the Reagan returns to previous operating areas, business as usual. If future carrier deployments maintain greater distance from Iranian territory or operate with enhanced electronic warfare escort, the Navy is adjusting tactics to account for validated threat. The talks that weren't happening are over. The silence from both Washington and Tehran tells you everything you need to know. Neither side wants to explain what actually occurred because honest explanation creates strategic disadvantages regardless of which version is accurate. Whether the world's most powerful aircraft carrier got electronically hijacked by a regional adversary or suffered embarrassing technical failures at the worst possible moment, the outcome is the same. American naval power temporarily withdrew from the world's most critical maritime choke point, while Iran demonstrates capabilities that shift calculations about military balance in the Persian Gulf. I'm tracking every development in this situation, monitoring satellite imagery of the Reagan's return transit, analyzing electromagnetic spectrum data from commercial monitoring services, and watching for official statements that might reveal what really happened. When the Navy releases maintenance details, when Iran publishes evidence supporting their claims, when the Reagan's deployment timeline becomes clear, you'll understand the implications here first with the technical analysis and strategic context that mainstream coverage will never provide. Subscribe to this channel right now and activate all notifications because the next 72 hours determine whether we just witnessed a propaganda stunt or a fundamental shift in naval warfare that makes billion-dollar aircraft carriers vulnerable to adversaries everyone assumed lacked the capability to challenge American dominance. Drop a comment answering these questions. Do you believe Iran actually forced a carrier withdrawal through electronic attack? Do you think the United States Navy is being honest about what happened? Do you think carriers remain viable in an era where GPS jamming can ground their aircraft? I read every comment and your analysis matters. The carrier is steaming home at maximum speed. Neither side is talking. The electromagnetic battle everyone hoped would never happen might have just been fought and won. without a single missile fired. Thanks for watching. The future of naval power just changed. The next 3 days reveal whether anyone outside classified briefing rooms understands how.